I'm Reisigo, and I'm attempting to complete every single GameCube game, but I'm randomizing what game I'm playing next. In this episode, we're playing through another Sonic collection and playing Sonic Gems Collection. So let's see how the Sonic Gems Collection is in 2024. Sonic Gems Collection was released on August 16, 2005, and was developed by the Sonic team and published by Sega. Sonic Gems Collection is a compilation of mostly Sonic games with a few unlockable games mixed in there. Since this is a compilation of games, I'm going to focus on one game for this video. The game I chose was one that I had never played before, and it wasn't in the other Sonic collection. That game is going to be Sonic the Fighters. Before that, however, we're going to talk about the collection, and what other games this has to offer to the players. Sonic Gems Collection comes with a total of 11 games that we can play, 9 when we turn the game on, and 2 more that we can unlock for doing various things. I'm going to mention all the games available, but just know I'm going to go into more detail for Sonic the Fighters. The first game on the list is Sonic CD, just a side-scrolling Sonic game that was released on the Sega CD back in 1993. Next is Sonic the Fighters, which was originally released in the arcade all the way back in 1996. Sonic R is a racing game that launched on the Sega Saturn in 1997. Then for some reason, this collection has a bunch of Sonic games that came out on the Sega Game Gear, which was a handheld that I have zero experience with. The first one of the Game Gear games is Sonic the Hedgehog 2, another Sonic scrolling platformer. We get Sonic Spinball, the pinball game that is beyond confusing on what to do. Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble, another side-scroller, but this one includes Knuckles. Sonic Drift 2, which is another racing game, but this time in carts instead of running on our feet. Tails Sky Patrol, another side-scroller that uses tails and focuses more on going up and down than left and right. And last on the Game Gear is Tails Adventure, which is another side-scroller like Sonic, but moves much slower than the Sonic games typically do. That's the original 9 that you'll get, and then the 2 unlockable games for this collection are Vector Man and Vector Man 2, which are very fun games, but are just side-scrolling platformers with a run-and-gun mechanic. They're challenging, but they end up being a lot of fun, and I think they're worth checking out if you're into something like that. That covers the collection, and overall I think there is a lot of value in them. I've never played the Game Gear, so I don't know if these games are the ones that people wanted to play the most, but it does give you a big selection to pick from. Let me know in the comments what your favorite game out of this collection is. I'd really love to know. Sonic the Fighters, also known as Sonic Championship outside of Japan, is a 3D fighting game that takes a lineup of Sonic characters and pits them against each other in a fighting game. This game immediately reminded me of Virtua Fighter or something along those lines. The presentation and how the controls handle feel very similar to those types of games. I mentioned this before, but this was released in the arcades in 1996 and had a small cast of characters, but it felt like plenty to me. We're going to go through the arcade mode and beat the final boss to consider this one complete for the sake of the GameCube challenge. The characters that are available to play as are Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Espio, Fang, Bean, and Bark. So naturally the one that feels the most like a fighter is Knuckles, and that's the one that I chose to take down this game. In our first match of the arcade mode, we have to fight ourselves, so it's Knuckles versus Knuckles. Who will be the better Knuckles? The interesting thing they did during this fight is just make the other Knuckles in black and white, instead of giving him a second costume, something that most fighting games end up doing. I like it, but it just isn't something that I've ever seen before. So let's explain how this game works. Each character has a health bar that is represented at the top of the screen. Once the meter is empty, the character will get knocked out and lose the round. These fights are the best out of 3, so the first person to win 2 rounds wins the fight. There is a second meter on the bottom of the screen that is labeled barrier. We can use these to block incoming attacks. When I was first playing this, I had no idea what they meant, so I didn't use a lot of them. There are a total of 10 stages in this game, and the first one we're fighting on is South Island. It looks like the standard Sonic starting area from any other Sonic game. Without much trouble in this fight, we're able to take down Knuckles on our first try. Not that I expected to lose the first fight in arcade mode, but we ended up getting through it. At the end of the fight, we get a little scene that shows the replay of the final attack to win the fight, and then the game shows us our clear time for the fight and our total time for the arcade mode. At the bottom of the screen, it shows how many Chaos Emeralds we have, We need to collect 8 of them to finish arcade mode. Alright, I think that covers the basics of the game, so let's move through the next fights. Next up, we have to fight Amy, and this takes place on a stage called Flying Carpet. This is a flying carpet in the middle of the desert. It looks like a wrestling ring with candles in the corners. This was another simple fight, and we actually flew through this fight, beating her twice in only 42 seconds. I was starting to get a bit more familiar with the controls during this fight, but you can tell that I was still learning them because I would miss a bunch of attacks and take damage because of it. Our next fight is against a character that I had never heard of, Bark the Polar Bear. I don't think he's ever been in any other game that I'm aware of. Anyways, this takes place on Aurora Ice Field, which is just an ice area with a nice sunset in the background. This was the first time during my playthrough that I would lose the match and have to rematch Bark. He just hits really hard compared to me, and I was still missing a lot of attacks and just taking a beating from him because I was just caught in no man's land. In this run, I was able to take him down, but it's still extremely close. I did have to get better during this fight because I wasn't going to be able to win unless I did. I think this was my third try at this fight, and it only took me 49 seconds to win. Next up is Espio the Chameleon, and this fight takes place on Mushroom Hill, which is the laziest of stage designs so far. It's just a square of mushrooms all around it. There's even mushrooms in the background. This fight ends up being super easy. I'm not sure if we just had a better matchup against Espio, or if I was just getting better at the game at this point, but I finished this fight in less than 30 seconds, and I was able to move on to the next stage against Tails. Everyone knows Tails from the Sonic series, and this fight takes place on another new stage called Canyon Cruise. We're fighting on the top of a yacht or something. This feels like they went on vacation, then got into a disagreement while having some drinks, and then this who's stronger bro fight happened. We didn't struggle too much in this fight, and we were able to take out Tails on our first attempt, even though we lost the second round against the Flying Menace. And we almost lost the final round of the fight too. This fight took longer than any other fight up to this point and took over a minute to win it. I'm glad that Tails put up a good fight against us though, it just felt satisfying. On to the next stage, which is against Fang the Sniper, another character that I'd never heard of. He's like a purple kangaroo with a cowboy hat. What a weird design. But we get to face off against Fang in a new stage called Casino Night, which is a really fun designed area. There is a giant slot machine in the background, and we have the suits for the cards surrounding the square that we fight inside of. It kind of feels like we're on some sort of trip. I think this is one that had a lot of thought put into it. We lost the first round of this fight, and I was worried that we were going to have to fight Fang a bunch of times like we did with Bark, but we made a crazy comeback and ended up winning 2 rounds in a row. I think I just spammed this weird kick for most of the fight though. I would have been that annoying player to play against back in the 90s that doesn't know any of the controls but still wins. Anyways, we finish this fight in just under 52 seconds and move on to stage 7. In stage 7, we have to fight Bean the Dynamite, which I don't even know what that means. Is he explosive? Yet again, this is another character that I had never heard of. It is a green duck with red running shoes. Fittingly, we have to fight him on a stage called Dynamite Plant, which is just a factory that I guess they produce dynamite inside. We're in a fenced-in square that feels like we're in the yard if this was prison. Bean uses bombs when fighting, so I guess that's what his nickname could mean. And he also throws these crazy headbutts that I really like. It zooms in and it slows down. We beat him in the first round, and then in the second round, even though it was close, we lost. Now we had to go to round 3 to finish the fight. We got lucky though, and he used all of his barrier, so he couldn't block anything we threw at him. And that would cause him to lose the fight. We won the fight in just under a minute and 20 seconds, and we can move on to the last stage of the game. Stage 8, and this fight is against the main man himself, Sonic the Hedgehog. This fight takes place on a stage called Giant Wing, which is just a fight on top of an airplane. We're up there flying, and I feel like it was friendly, and then Sonic said something to Knuckles that made him want to show off his strength, so yet again they decided to see who would win and started fighting on top of this plane. We won the first round of this fight, but I don't know how because we didn't have much health either. Then in the second round, we took a beating, but we were able to land a good combination of attacks at the end to win the fight. We completed stage 8 on our first attempt and in less than 50 seconds. Once we win the fight, we get a scene that shows that we got all 8 Chaos Emeralds from beating all the other characters in fights. Then we get a cutscene where Knuckles gets on a Tails-themed spaceship and takes off towards a space station, which this space station belongs to Dr. Eggman. But when we arrive, we're attacked by his new experiment, Metal Sonic, and this is easily the hardest fight in the game, and it took me over 10 tries to win the fight. This fight takes place on a stage called Death Egg's Eye, and reminds me of like a control center of a ship, if there was a UFC fighting square in the middle of the room. The stage isn't that great, but the fight really does challenge you. Metal Sonic hits like a freight train, and he's also quick, so it's hard to do much against him. Even in the attempt that I was able to beat him, he got a perfect in the first round against me, meaning that I didn't land a single hit against him. The only thing I can really say is that even though I lost a bunch of times, this fight goes by so fast that you don't even notice. When we won this fight, all 3 rounds took less than 40 seconds to complete. The technique of this fight is to dodge a lot and learn how to block for the right attacks, because we don't want to waste our barrier for attacks that don't hit as hard. It took a while, and maybe with some cheese we were able to win the fight, but we're not done yet. We get a cutscene right after the fight that starts a countdown, telling us that the Death Egg 2 is going to explode, and we only have 30 seconds to escape. Seems easy, right? Nope, we have to fight Eggman himself. Good thing this fight isn't hard, because we use the emeralds to become super, and we can do a bunch of damage. We also only have to beat him in 1 round to win the fight, so this makes this part pretty simple. The only thing we have to worry about is the timer, because we only have 20 seconds to take him down, and that he tries to block everything you throw at him. Once we win the fight, Knuckles celebrates, and we get one last cutscene showing Knuckles leaving on the spaceship that we came there on. The Death Egg 2 explodes in the background, and we get one last close-up of Knuckles before he flies back down to Earth and the credits start to roll. We finished this game, another game down for the GameCube challenge. Would I recommend this game? I think I would recommend this one. The collection has a bunch of games that might be hard to find now, so it's nice that they're all in one place, and some of them are actually really fun to play. I focused on Sonic the Fighters and had a great time going through this one, so overall I wasn't upset with my time playing the collection. But let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you want to know what game we're playing next, stick around, but if not, thanks for watching, and check out the last GameCube game that we completed in our challenge that's on the screen now. If you made it this far, make sure to subscribe to the channel because it helps me out. Like and share this video so we can get more eyes on this challenge, and as always, we'll see you in the next one. Alright, so we have our random number generator up. We have our GameCube game list up, and when we count, and on the count of 3, we are going to find out what we are playing next. So in the count of 3, 2, 1. We got 418, which is The Sum of All Fears. Is that a game? Tactical shooter game by Ubisoft. No other than Ubisoft, right?